Hi, everyone. Welcome to another literacy loving edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. I'm delighted on this episode to be joined by author, educator, Holly Britton, Holly Squiggle Squad as well. Holly, welcome, and thank you for bringing a lovely bookcase, and I believe you also have a lemur as well.
Oh, yes, that was painted by one of my kids, my son. They're all adults, but yes,
Nice.
that's right.
Um, but you have to have the shelfie in some way. It has to be there, I feel like.
That's right.
Yeah.
Uh,
I know that we're talking about the joys, the power of crafting by hand on this episode, which is something that I continue to play with in the classroom and I continue to think about. I've been on this journey of being really interested in sort of like digital creation and the things that people can do with technology, computers, and the programs. But being in the classroom, I've also found a great power and wealth of resources in just having students fill out an index card or craft something on paper. So very curious to talk to you about this passion of yours and some of the ideas that you have to share.
I'm happy to share it. One of my favorite topics, of course. And it is really fun for me to address an audience that is not just littles. I work primarily with teachers, administrators, parents of kids who are just acquiring language for the first time. So this is really fun for me to play out handwriting across the grades, across the subjects, and into mastery, which I know a lot of your listeners have experienced themselves as either authors or teachers. So yeah, fun to explore that with you.
Yeah, yeah. Please share with us your background, a little bit of your story as an educator, how you became interested in this topic.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed reading. I haven't always been an avid reader, and I wasn't always a reader of great literature until I became a homeschooling mom, which sort of hit me over the head like a two by four because it wasn't a thing back when I started in the early 90s. And I had never dreamt, thought, pursued any kind of career in teaching. So it was really a surprise to me when my first was born, and that that opportunity, that choice came before me. And so we crawled into it. Actually, I probably jumped in with both feet because I realized that I really enjoyed being with my kids. I enjoyed watching them learn, and I became addicted to presenting them with the opportunities and information that they needed to learn how to learn. And that happened over 18, 20 years. During that time, I was also teaching workshops. I ended up getting my master's. I got my teaching credential and helped locally. I went first into private school education, where I eventually became involved in admin as a curriculum director. So I have worked with curriculum and students from preschool all the way through eighth grade. And then I went into public school. I was in that classroom when COVID hit. And at that point, sort of pivoted my career, tried to make a decision that would, in the second half of my career, help as many people as I could help based on what I had learned in my previous experience. So I had at some point been coaching kindergarten teachers. And then when I was teaching in third, fourth, and fifth grade, it all came to a head where I realized the fundamental skills that should have been imparted in the early years of their schooling was affecting me in the middle to upper grades because they had not acquired those skills. So I decided what we needed a way to impart this that was better. We're now in a digital world. A lot of people don't understand the connection to literacy that handwriting brings. And it was really noticeable. That was, for me, one of the big glaring red flags was they actually cannot get their thoughts on paper. They're having a hard time getting what they see in their head and say with their mouth into print, whether it was handwriting or um, keyboarding, both were difficult for the kids. And I realized it was in large part because they had not been trained to the point of it becoming automatic. It just wasn't easy for them. And I knew that that could be made better in the early grades. So stepped out of the classroom and I started this company called Squiggle Squad, where we address the developmental needs of a little who's acquiring language for the very first time.
Yeah, and very timely and good conversation with the pandemic and pieces of life that were experienced there. I can remember trying to work with littles online through reading clinic practices and attempting to do some sort of handwriting. I remember we actually started mailing materials to students just so they would have
Yes.
something that they could manipulate and start to use. But there are definitely those challenges if you're only using a screen.
Yeah, it's so hard. I mean, never mind the whole eye contact and facial expression and but
Hmm.
all of the problems that come with focus and memory and for littles short-term memory versus long-term memory and working memory, um, that all of that has to be developed. They're not born with it. It needs to be developed
Hmm.
over years. And you need to present it to them in a, a doable progression so that they can acquire it little by little. So it builds up. And what ends up happening is in at least in those early grades is we're presenting it at very very early ages. I mean, goodness gracious, they're expecting kindergartners to come in writing their alphabet already, and that's barely even 5 years old. So we are presenting handwriting, if you would, at the ages of 3 and 4. And
Hmm.
then by the time they get to 6, so, kindergarten's this really kind of, when it comes to handwriting, it's like, well, we'll do a little bit here, we'll do a little bit there, we'll see what they get. By first grade, for sure, they'll have it. And then first grade teachers just jump right into spelling words and right into writing sentences and paragraphs. And these poor kids have not acquired the physical ability, the physical skill of getting their thoughts onto paper. And so, of course, we're losing them.
There's also the vital practice of writing that is part of that conversation. I know that sometimes writing instruction gets looked over in some spaces, but it really is so key because, as you mentioned, it's not something that students are born with. Even the capacity for speaking, responding, generating language is different orally than through
Yes.
a written form. So there's a very specific sort of process to that students have to practice.
Well, even like our conversation here, you'll ask me a question and I'll take a few seconds to mull it over in my brain and come up with an answer. But if you had emailed me that question and told
Mhm.
me to get back to you tomorrow, my answer would sound so different than these spontaneous things that come to my mind because writing just gives us space and time. And it gives us space and time to rework our thoughts, maybe even to come up with a different thought. Like, what if the question you asked me has a better answer than the one I gave you just now? And I don't have the time in this podcast to go back and rework that answer. But if you were
Mhm.
to ask me to write it, I could write you an article, a paragraph, an entire article on what you that question, and I can give you better word order and better exact wording, the exact vocabulary word I needed to express that in the exact way. And then maybe the thing I was trying to communicate would be communicated a lot more clear and a lot fuller than I would have if I just spoke it to you, extemporaneously.
Yeah, yeah. And anyone who has edited a transcript knows that process
Yes.
well. And yeah, the difference between what we say and what we write. You were talking about being a teacher and finding a problem in the classroom and addressing that. What was that like for you? And anything else that you'd like to say about how that problem started to manifest?
It's great you asked me this question because I actually had an aha moment when I realized, wait, this is going wrong. And it's not just a little wrong with this one girl in this one class. This is systemic. And that was
Mhm.
one day they had been given a journal prompt by a teacher I was teaching with. She had given the journal prompt in the morning, and the assignment was to take 10 minutes and write in your notebook an answer to this prompt. And after, I don't know, it must have been close to 10 minutes, I started walking around the room to see how the kids were doing. And I expected to see sentences. And kid after kid had a few sentences very poorly written. And then this one girl was sitting there with no words on her paper. And I knew she was a bright, willing little student. And so I bent down with her and I said, "What are you thinking? What can you tell me what you're thinking about?" Because she wasn't drifting off. She was focused, and she just spewed this whole long story in answer to the question. And I realized she has so much going on in her brain, and she doesn't know how to get it out on paper.
Okay.
And this was, she was probably fourth grade. Again, it was a combo class, so I think this little one was in fourth grade. And by then she should have been able to step by step at least get something started on her paper. And so that was my first realization, like, if I had her by herself, where would I start with her? And my first assessments with her would be, if I tell you to write a sentence, can you write it? If I give you the sentence, if I give you the thought, are you able to take it from your brain, having heard me say it, and write it on a piece of paper? And a lot of kids are stuck there. And then we ask them to do so much more. And the complex ask is just layer upon layer upon layer of pieces of writing that they can't do. So as a teacher, it's really wise. And as a curriculum designer, the whole point is to pull it all apart and then build it back up. And we should be doing that from their earliest grades.
Yeah, yeah, and strategy is such a part of that, both on the teaching side and on the side of the student who's trying to generate, who's trying to get these ideas and process them, put them on paper.
Yes.
So very important work. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and speaking as someone who's worked with older readers, uh, I run into some of those same presenting notions, which is, well, let me defer to AI. Let me, try this
Mm,
easier response,
mm,
instead of kind of giving you something that's authentically me. And still thinking through, like, okay, what is this sentence doing? Where should we go after that sentence? And kind of laying those strategies out. You mentioned that there are accomplished writers who have used handwriting and creating on paper as part of their process. Anything that you'd like to expound on with that?
So I'm sure that some of your listeners themselves are accomplished writers that probably pick up a pencil and paper or pen and paper now and again to maybe get through a writer's block, or maybe help them hone their own thoughts about something. But in a recent article that I wrote, I did do a little bit of homework. I had known about Stephen King having this practice. I had known about J.K. Rowling having this practice. But when you go back in history, even within the typewriter times, you still have accomplished authors using handwriting as a means, as a tool for writing. And I think it's probably, the further back you go, of course, it's because it was baked into the culture. It was baked into the way a writer wrote. And I think moving it up into the digital age, we've taken for granted what writing does to our brain. But there's a lot of accomplished people that know better. And most recently, and super interesting to me, was an interview I heard with Sam Altman, who is, Mr. AI himself. And he has an intricate um, uh, methodology for writing in notebooks and using those note papers to create. And the likes of Steve Jobs has done it, he did the same. It's just really interesting to see that we think that kids are going to use digital means because they were born into a digital world without thinking that we have actually taken a tool, a thinking tool away from them by not giving
Mhm.
them that skill, by not giving them, I mean, it is so convenient to pick up a pencil. How awesome that you're in a restaurant and you have a thought and you can write it on a napkin. How many people do we know that have creative novels or comic books, or because they had the idea and they could immediately get it out on paper. And for us to rob kids of that is just, it's so wrong to me. It's so, because handwriting, I say this all the time, handwriting is human. It's a piece of
Mhm.
who we are, and it's not just something that you see on paper. It's something we do as humans. It's not a noun, it's a verb, it's an action. And but it's not innate. We're not born with it. And I think we've lost sight of that fact too, that it has to be taught. And if kids are going to use it as a tool, we better teach them well, because otherwise they will forfeit that. They won't have that tool to use.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you were talking about comics. There's this ongoing kind of conversation about digital creation versus traditional
Yeah.
methods. And I am a big fan, just as a creator and as a reader, of putting art on a page and working that art into what you want it to be. And the mistakes are there, and that does require time. But there is something very special in the art world about something that's created by hand versus a digital tool as well.
Do you find that when you write, draw, create by hand, and then go to digital, you do it better? Do you
Hmm.
find that as a
Yeah.
creator?
I find that personally, and I'm by no means a professional. I know other creators that start digitally, end digitally. It's all digital. I would venture to guess that their creative processes also started on paper somewhere as they were training. But there's also kind of that cool factor of I'm taking something that I've created by hand and augmented, added to, so it's not an either or kind of situation where I can
Oh, I
scan
couldn't
it
agree
in and
more.
do something.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When we created our product, Squiggle Squad, the handwriting curriculum, it's based around 5 animals that are drawn, and it was really important to me when we picked our artist. There was a team of us. It was myself, my daughter, whose co-founder is a graphic designer herself, an amazing artist, and then we
Wow.
hired an artist out of Kansas. Uh, I wish I could remember her name. Oh my goodness, it was so five. It's been almost 6 years now. Um, yeah, go on my about page. She's there.
Okay.
And the reason I chose her is because she was a digital artist, but she did it by hand. She used a stylus in Procreate and drew so
Mhm.
that her drawings were less clip art and more artistic. And that was really important to us because it came across as a little bit more human, a little bit more personal, and the whole process was wonderful. And it was both. I did a lot of drawing by. I'm not a wonderful end artist. I can conceptually, I can get it out on paper, and then I would give it over to the team, and they would get it into digital print. And it was a really wonderful creation process that happened. And I loved watching her do it by hand. She, it was really wonderful. And then my daughter did a lot of the corrections and tweaks by hand because of the software that we used, and we were able to do that.
Yeah, yeah. That's such a great message of collaboration in that too, and such a great process. You were talking about people writing down ideas in restaurants. I once interviewed a comics creator who keeps a dry erase board next to the shower, so that if he gets an idea in the shower, he reaches and can
I
write it
love
down.
it. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
it. That's so smart.
Yeah. How many great ideas do you get in the shower? I mean,
A
yet another
lot.
space.
Sometimes when I have writer's block, I go take a shower.
Yeah, yeah. Which is both hygienic and productive. So there you go. Um,
And warm when
uh,
you're in a cold climate.
that's right. Before we get to the final question that's on the list here, which is about resources and learning more places to go, anything that we've missed that you want to make sure to include, any B-roll, as you were mentioning earlier, that we want to edit in?
Um, a couple challenges I might throw out there to people listening. One, if you are involved in the training up of a child and at all have any sway in their education, it really is a good idea to look at handwriting as a tool for learning and give them that skill no matter what age. Start them well when they're young and intervene when they're older if they're really struggling. And the older they are, the more I like to advise that you get buy-in from those kids. They need to know it's a skill that they would love because most of them hate it. They say they hate it, and that's because it's a struggle and we don't like things that are hard. But if you liken it to, say, playing an instrument, there is a period of time at the very beginning when it's novel, it's a lot of fun. And then you get really tired of practicing and you don't want to do it anymore. And it's really hard and you sound terrible and you think you'll never get it. And if you push past that, you get this unbelievable, indescribable joy of being able to play music from your heart. And handwriting is just like that. We have to take them through the necessary struggle if they're going to experience the joy of writing by hand. And I think if you have any say in a child's life or in the life of a teacher who may be charged with um, imparting this skill, I would really, really encourage you to step into that child's life in that way. For your authors that have not yet that haven't tried handwriting for a while, it might be a really fun experiment to see what
Mhm.
happens if you give yourself a writing prompt and 20 minutes and a page and just say write and don't just give yourself that challenge and see what comes out of your brain. You might be pleasantly surprised at what you're able to mine out of the recesses.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love the creative processes, and very well said. Any particular resources that you want to share with listeners? Any spaces online or in person that they should go to learn more?
I my own personal resources, of course, I can't highly recommend enough. Squiggle Squad is for ages about 3. We start way down in preschool, all the way to up to about age 8. It is a stroke by stroke approach that gives kids the ability to pick up this skill with a lot of joy and a lot of fun because you it's all paired with these 5 friends: lines the lemur, curves the camel, bubbles the bunny, slide the seal, and dash the duck. And they represent a favorite stroke. So again, it's movement, it's a kinesthetic connection to what they're learning in print to read and to speak. So I do recommend that. I don't know how much of your writers read to write, but Francis Prose, if you haven't read it yet, a classic book called How to, do I have it? How to Read Like a Writer is really
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. Stephen King's on writing, even if whether you like Stephen King's stuff or not, his on writing is sensational. And of course, the old favorites of William Zensler, all the classics, that I think help writers poke into places they haven't touched for a while and sort of open up new possibilities for their writing.
Absolutely. Wonderful resources, wonderful conversation. Many thanks, Holly, for the conversation, and may it continue.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It was a pleasure to speak with you today.